Well, good evening. How you doing? Hope you're having a great week. Still early in the week, isn't it? It's Monday, right? October 4th, Monday, October 4th, and it is 8:11 p.m. and I am stuck in Laredo, Texas. There are two main things that I want to talk about in this video. Number 1 is being stuck in Laredo, Texas due to stupid Landstar policies. And number 2, my APU. I'm taking this time to get some APU issues resolved, hopefully. Um, that's like my APU is like an ongoing joke. I'm just constantly putting this APU in the shop. So let's talk about why I'm stuck in Laredo because of stupid Landstar policies, and then we'll talk about the APU. So what is the stupid Landstar policy? If you take a cross-border trailer, if you do a drop for a trailer that's going into Mexico, the only way that you can get an empty afterward is to go through the Laredo terminal. They are the only ones that can issue you an empty. You cannot go through regular trailer utilization. And what the person that handles the empty trailers told me is that they rarely ever get empties. They said, you guys drop trailers off here that are going to Mexico and they're loaded. So we have loaded trailers being dropped off from the United States that are going into Mexico. And then when the trailers are coming back out of Mexico and they're dropped off at the Laredo terminal, they're also loaded. They're loaded trailers coming in from Mexico. So that trailer that went into Mexico loaded picked up a load and they're bringing it back into the Laredo terminal loaded. So she said almost all of the trailers that we get at the Laredo terminal are loaded. We rarely ever have empties. She said the only time we ever really get empties is, let me try to remember what she said. I think she said that the only time that they get empties is when somebody comes down, does a delivery, does a live unload in town, and then picks up a preloaded trailer out of the Laredo terminal. And she said that's not very common. She said most people that come down to Laredo to pick up loads, they're dropping a trailer going into Mexico, and they're picking up a loaded coming out. So she told me that she has people on the wait list that have been on the wait list since September 22nd. How many days is that? So there's 30 days in September, so that's 8 days plus 4 days, that's 12 days. So there are people on the wait list that have been there for almost 2 weeks. Those are the people ahead of me. There are people ahead of me that have been waiting for almost 2 weeks. So I went around in a really big circle this morning. Trailer utilization isn't open on the weekends. I dropped this trailer off Saturday morning. There was a whole bunch of drama with delivering this load. Basically, I got to Penske. Penske is where I was supposed to drop the trailer off, and it doesn't matter with this stupid policy whether you drop it at the Landstar terminal or another customs broker here in Laredo. If it's going to Mexico, if Mexico is its destination, then you have to go through the Landstar Laredo terminal to get it empty. So I tried to deliver it to Penske on Thursday, Was it Thursday or was it Friday? I think it was Friday. Yeah, I spent all day Thursday and then half the day Friday. Well, not all day. Half the day Thursday and half the day Friday getting a DOT inspection done on the trailer and then getting a bunch of repairs done on it before I dropped it off. I didn't want to drop it off when a DOT inspection was just about to expire on it. But then I went over to Penske to deliver it Friday, and they didn't have any record of the load. So they said that I would have to leave the property and get with my boss and get the paperwork sent over to them. Now, when I say they didn't have the paperwork for the load, I'm not talking about the bills of lading. I had the bills of lading. They didn't have any record. They're just a customs broker. So somebody has to, set up the load with them. And then I come over there and give them the bills for the load, and they take possession of the trailer, and then they take it to wherever they're supposed to take it and hand it off. But they didn't have any record of this load. So it took me a day to get in touch with the broker on the load. He is impossible to reach. Frank with GBQ, I think it is, really, really hard to reach. Even though this was an amazing paying load, I don't think I'll ever haul another load for GBQ just because it was how hard. I had a lot of issues with the load, and I had to sit around for several days because I just couldn't reach Frank on some really basic stuff. He was really, really hard to get a hold of. And he took 2 days to process the delivery. The load was still listed as being on me. I dropped it off Saturday morning at the Laredo terminal, and it was still listed as being on me until today, this afternoon, like Monday afternoon. But anyway, I called trailer utilization as soon as they opened up today. They're Monday through Friday. They're East Coast. They're open from like 8 to 5 or something like that. So I started calling them at like 7 a.m. Central Time. And I got a hold of them, and as soon as I told them that I dropped a trailer off going to Mexico, they're like, yeah, you're going to have to call the Laredo terminal. We can't help you. And so I was like, okay. They gave me the phone number. I called them, and it was a pain in the ass to reach the person at the Laredo terminal. I was on hold for a long time, and she went on some rant about how I should have checked in with the guard shack and told them I needed an empty, and all kind, just ranting and raving about how the process works. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't do it right. This is my first time I've ever done this. And she was like, you could have been on the list on Saturday whenever you dropped the trailer. I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do right now to get on the list? She said, hold on. And she put me on hold for over 10 minutes. She just said, hold on, and put me on hold for 10 minutes. She didn't tell me why she's put me on hold, nothing. Man, she was such a pain in the ass to deal with. After 10 minutes, she comes back. She's like, what's your truck number? So I gave her the info, and then she explained to me about, how ridiculously long it could take for me to get an empty, and how I should have, told the guard shack I needed an empty on Saturday when I dropped the trailer. And I forgot what all else she ranted and raved about. And I was like, well, what about the new trailers that, we have new trailers that are coming in from Mexico that are, I picked those up before. And she's like, well, if you picked those up before whenever you came down here. She didn't understand what I was saying. I have never done a cross-border load. And she thought that there was a huge miscommunication with her. She was really wired. She had way too much coffee, or she was on meth or something. She was really wired. And so she was jumping to a lot of conclusions based on assumptions and stuff. And she was basically thought that I did a cross-border load before, and that somehow I got one of the new trailers. And she's like, well, if they did that for you, then this... I forgot what explanation she came up with for that. But she basically said that they don't have access to the new trailers. she said that they have to maintain a one in, one out trailer ratio with Mexico operations. So they have limited access to trailers, extremely limited access to trailers. I'm like, this is crazy. This is so bizarre and weird, and I can't believe nobody told me that dropping a trailer in Laredo could cause me to have to sit around for 2 or more weeks waiting on a trailer. And normally, well, I'll get to what I was about to say in just a second. Let me explain something else first. So I was like, well, so what's the deal now? Am I on the wait list now? And she said, yeah, I've got you on the wait list. And I was like, you're just going to call me whenever a trailer is available? She's like, yeah, I'll call you whenever a trailer is available. I was like, all right, bye. So I got off the phone with her, and then I immediately called trailer utilization. This is what I want to explain before I tell you what I was going to say. So I called trailer utilization back, and I'm like, what in the hell is the deal with this Laredo crap? The reason I called trailer utilization is because the person at that ran the empties down here in Laredo, like I said, she was wired. She was randomly putting me on hold, and she was talking a whole lot of nonsense. She was cutting me off mid-sentence and jumping to conclusions and making assumptions, and it was really, really difficult to communicate with her. So I decided to call up trailer utilization just to clarify the situation and to ask them if there was anything they could do for me. So I called trailer utilization as soon as I got off the phone with her, and I'm like, hey, I'm down here in Laredo. I dropped off a trailer that's going into Mexico, and the guy starts, you could hear him sighing, and he's getting ready to do his spiel about telling me that I have to call Laredo. And I said, I already called you guys, and you guys told me to call the Laredo office and that I had to do my empty through them. And I called them, and I was just told that it's going to be 2 or more weeks before I get a trailer. They have people that's been sitting here waiting on a trailer for 2 weeks that are ahead of me. And he said, yeah, unfortunately, that's the process. And I said, that's crazy. You're telling me that I've got to just shut down in Laredo for 2 weeks. And Laredo is the only place that I can get a terminal out of. This is what I was about to say a minute ago. Laredo is the only place I can get a trailer out of. If I'm going to be waiting this long, I live 600 miles away in Oklahoma City. So you're telling me that if I drove to Oklahoma City and waited for an empty, that whenever an empty became available, I would have to drive all the way back down to Laredo to get it? And he's like, yeah. So I'm stuck in Laredo. I have no other option. I can't get an empty anywhere else in the country. Laredo is the only place I can get an empty. And he said, yeah. I said, this is crazy. A lot of people can't afford to shut down for 2 weeks. And nobody told me that this was going to happen whenever I booked this load. No one's ever told me about this. And now you're just shutting me down for 2 weeks. That would put a lot of people out of business. I mean, you're talking about, this is a really big deal. People would terminate their lease contract over stuff like this. And he was like, yeah, I understand. He said, it's out of my control. It's something that we have talked about at great length. And it's something that we've tried to get rectified. And we've tried to give drivers other options for getting trailers. But unfortunately, the people, who make decisions, well, he didn't word it exactly like that. He was like, I don't have any authority to do anything. And we've brought up all these issues that you're bringing up right now. We've already brought them up to other people's attention, and unfortunately, this is what we have to do. And I was like, man, this sucks really, really bad. I said, there's no other options. That's it. I just have to sit here in Laredo and wait for an empty. Either that or go lease with another company. I'm never going to get another empty from Landstar except from this terminal. And he said, yep, that's it. Like, all right, thanks. So now I'm stuck in Laredo waiting for an empty. So my suggestion to anyone driving for Landstar is never, ever take a load that you're dropping the trailer going to Mexico, because you could be stuck for several weeks waiting for an empty. And you can't, you could drive back home, but you would have to drive back down here to get the empty. The drive to my house is basically a one-day drive. It's a one-day drive to my house. So I'm debating going back home. It's something that I'm thinking about right now. I don't know. I haven't really put a lot of thought into it. I'm really wanting to wait and see how the APU repair goes before I make that decision. But, I live 600 miles from Laredo, Texas. That's a single drive shift. I could drive home. What's 600 miles in fuel? It's negligible. Once you take into consideration how much fuel I burn idling the APU or idling the truck, the fuel cost is extremely negligible. So 600, and we'll say 7.5 miles per gallon divided by 7.5. Was that right? 80 gallons of fuel? Yeah, that's right. Because I was sitting there thinking, man, that's a lot of fuel to only go 600 miles. And I was sitting there thinking, well, I only get about 1,200 miles to a tank, 12 to 1,400, and I only have two 100-gallon tanks. So yeah, it's like half a tank right there. So 80. And what am I paying for fuel right now? With discounts, roughly $2.75 a gallon. So times 2.75, $220. So it would cost me $220 in fuel and one drive shift to deadhead home. And then I could sit at my house and wait for an empty, and then it would cost me $220 and a drive shift to get back down here. I'm going to have to make a decision on whether or not to just sit down here in Laredo and wait on an empty, or to go to my house and sit and wait on an empty. This is really pissing me off. I just took a month off at home, and then I get out here, my very first load, I'm going to have to sit around for over 2 weeks waiting on an empty. She tried really hard to explain to me that it could take a really, really long time to get an empty. She said that she has, she didn't even say that 2 weeks was like a normal time. She said she had a bunch of people on the wait list, and she had people that have been on the wait list since at least September 22nd. So she was just trying to convey to me how long it's going to take. She's just trying to tell me it's going to be a very long time. So anyway, that's the decision I need to make, is whether to hang out down here in Texas or to drive back up to my house. If I can get the APU working correctly, then that severely reduces how much it costs me to sit in this truck. So it actually wouldn't, cost me very much money to sit in the truck if I can get the APU working properly. But as it stands right now with the way the APU functions, I have to idle the main engine a lot when it gets really hot down here, and it's really hot down here in Laredo. It's 90 plus, like 95 degrees are the highs during the day. So I'm having to idle the APU whenever I'm running it. It's running constantly. So it's so hot down here that I'm always running one of the two engines to keep it tolerable inside the truck. Right now it's 76. It's 8:30 p.m. The sun has gone down, and with the APU running constantly all day, it was over 80 degrees inside the truck. And then after the sun's gone down, now it's 76 degrees inside the truck. The APU sucks. But if I can get the fuel cost down, with the APU repair that I'll be talking about in a minute, then the benefit of sitting here rather than going home, aside from, I'm not going to be spending all that money in fuel to drive there and back. The benefit is per diem days. It's roughly somewhere in the area of $58 a day that you can write off anytime you're away from your house. So if I sit here for 2 weeks waiting on a trailer, that's 58 times 14. That's $812 in tax write-offs. So it shifts my taxable income, $812 of it, over to non-taxable income. So it would save me money. It would be more cost effective for me if I stayed in the truck down in Laredo. Only if I can get it to where I'm not idling the main engine. If I have to idle the main engine, I burn about a gallon per hour. If I idle the APU engine, it's about a quarter of a gallon per hour. So it's 4 times the fuel usage if I idle the main engine. So idling the main engine for just 10 hours a day, that's 10 gallons a day. And then the APU engine for the other 14 hours of the day, let's figure out how much it costs if I have to run the main engine when the sun's out. So that's 10 gallons, and then 14 divided by 0.25. That's not right. I did it wrong. No, it's 14 times 0.25. Like, what the fuck? That's not right. 14 times 0.25. So that's 3.5 gallons. See how much of a difference it is on the APU versus the main engine? Just running the main engine for 10 hours is 10 gallons of fuel. Running the APU engine for 14 hours is 3.5 gallons of fuel. So that's 13.5 gallons of fuel per day if I'm idling both the main engine and the APU to maintain temperature, times 2.75. That's $37 a day that it's costing me in fuel to stay comfortable in here. Now, if I can get it to where I just run the APU, that's 24 times 0.25. That's 6 gallons total per day, times 2.75. So it's costing me $16.50 a day to run the APU versus $37 and whatever it was per day to run both the APU and the main engine. And if I just have to run the main engine 24 hours a day, that gets really expensive. So that's 24 gallons times 2.75. That's $66 a day. So running the main engine 24 hours a day versus running the APU engine 24 hours a day, it's $66 a day to run the main engine and $16 and some change to run the APU engine. Now, if the APU starts working really well, it starts working the way it's supposed to, then the APU won't even run all day. All these numbers are with it running constantly. I'm constantly running an engine. There's never a point when the engines are shut off. So if I can get it to the APU air conditioner working well enough, then there will be long periods of time where the engine won't run at all. And that saves even more in fuel. So now let's transition over into, we'll talk about the APU. What is wrong with the APU? The APU is running great. The HVAC's running great. Everything is working great, except it's not working correctly. Like, it runs without issue, and it blows cold air, but it's not blowing cold enough air. So the air coming out of the vents is only an average of 20 degrees colder than whatever the outside temperature is. So if it's 90 degrees outside, the air coming out of the vents is usually about 75 degrees, 70 degrees. Well, the difference in it fluctuates between 15 degree difference and 25 degree difference. And generally what changes that is direct sunlight. So at night, whenever there isn't any direct sunlight on the truck, it's usually a 25 degree difference. So it cools a lot better inside this truck whenever there's no direct sunlight. But during the day, when there's direct sunlight, then it's usually only about a 15 degree difference. So to give you some numbers on that, let's say it's 100. Let's use the temperatures we've been getting in Laredo. It's been getting up to about 95 degrees as a high during the day. So at 95 degrees during the day, with the sun out, direct sunlight, on average, what I'm getting coming out of the vents inside here, the air temperature coming out of the vents is about 80 degrees. 95 degrees outside, and it's blowing like 75 to 80 degree air out of the vents. Now, the air intake is underneath the bunk. So if I were to run the main air conditioning unit and get it down to like 60 degrees inside here, and then turn on the APU air conditioner, then I would get really cold air coming out of the vents. It would be it could be like a 40 degree difference. It could be 90 degrees outside, but because it's already 60 degrees in the truck, the air that the HVAC system is pulling in is 60 degree air. So it's blowing out like 50 degree air. So I have like a 40 degree difference. But slowly over time, the inside of the truck will heat up, and it'll eventually get down to where there's only like a 15 degree difference, and it'll be like 87 degrees inside the truck while it's 95 degrees outside. It'll get up to like 87, 90 degrees inside the truck. Well, back here in the sleeper area, it'll be, if it's 95 degrees outside and I'm running the APU, there's direct sunlight, it'll be somewhere in the area of 90 degrees. So if it's 95 outside, it'll be about 90 degrees right where I'm sitting at in the sleeper. Up in the front cab, away from all the APU vents, it might get up to over 95 degrees up there. It might be like 100, 105 degrees up there in the front. I tried to explain all of this to the APU tech. Because I have all this downtime, I'm sitting around waiting on a trailer, I decided to go ahead and take my APU over to the shop and see if they can't fix this problem. Let me back up a little bit, and before I get to the part where I tell you about the APU tech, in trying to resolve this issue myself, I've come to the conclusion, based on all the research that I've done, that there are two main issues causing this problem. Number one issue is not... This will help, but I don't think this is the main cause of the problem. So number one issue is the HVAC system, the hermetic whatever thing that sits underneath the bunk. And real quickly, let me describe how the APU system works for the Carrier, because it's different for Thermo King, and it's probably different for all the other ones. Like on Thermo King, the compressor is belt. It's run by a belt on the APU engine. Well, the Carrier APU, the HVAC system is completely run on electricity. There's a generator on the APU engine. It's like a 6,000 watt generator. It provides power to a battery, or not a battery, but an electrical operated HVAC system that sits underneath my bunk. So that's how it works. That's the basic of how it works. So that little box underneath my bunk, which is a battery, or not a battery, I keep saying battery, it's an electric HVAC system That little black box has 4 vent holes on the back side of it that you can hook ductwork up to and run vents throughout the truck. Well, one of the big reasons that I've read that the APU air conditioner doesn't cool the truck properly is because of bad installations. A lot of it boils down to how they run the ductwork. They just half-ass the ductwork, and one of the ways that they half-ass the ductwork is they don't use all of those outputs, all the outlets, all the ducts, all 4 of them. They'll only use 1 or 2 or 3 to simplify the installation, because running the ductwork can be a pain in the ass, cutting holes and running it through everything. Well, on mine, they only are using 3 of the 4. So it's severely cutting down the cubic feet per minute of airflow coming out of the system. So it would be really, really, really easy for me to run another vent. To explain how easy it would be, there's a hole cut out underneath this. So this is my table or my desk. Underneath this, just over here, there's a vent. Unscrew that vent, and there's a big hole in the wall. And I can stick my hand in that hole, and it's only about, a foot, maybe a foot and a half over, and then there's that vent that's not connected. So all I've got to do is get, some of that duct stuff, and just put it over that vent, and then run it right out that same hole. Remove the vent cap, and just put a plate on there with a vent on it, and then I'll have another duct running out of there. I really just need more ducting. And I plan on buying ducting here at the dealer, and they said that's not something that they sell. I'm like, are you kidding me? They said, no, we've never even had anybody ask to buy that. I'm like, okay, that's really weird. And they said that the only time we ever get it is when we're doing an install and we buy it as part of the installation kit. Like, all right. So I talked with the mechanic that's working on my unit about it, and he was like, I might be able to find some around here somewhere. And I said, I asked him, I said, like, aside from just, selling me the part, do you have any laying around somewhere? I just need like a short section of it, maybe a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet. And I said, do you have any left over from a previous installation, like sitting in the trash or something, like anything? And he was like, no, we don't have anything. And I was, talking with the mechanic about this, and the mechanic was like, you know what? I bet I could find some around here. He said, when I work on your APU tomorrow, I'll put some in your truck, and I'll leave it in there for you. I'm like, all right, cool. So he's going to try and hook me up tomorrow. So that's one of the issues on why this APU, in my opinion, and the mechanic agreed with me on that, that's going to help a lot. So that's one of the issues, and it's a really simple fix. I just need that duct work. It's like $1 a foot, so it's like $3 worth of duct that I need that could really help me out. And I've tried to MacGyver my own duct stuff, and it's a real pain in the ass. I could probably eventually get something together, but man, it's a real pain in the ass because you need something really, really flexible because it's some really tight turns. But so that's number one. Number two, that right there helps with the cubic feet per minute, the amount of air that's coming out. The issue on why the air, it's not blowing really cold air, and everything that I've read says that the difference between the outside temperature and the temperature coming out of your vents needs to be a minimum of a 40-degree difference. If it's not a 40-degree difference, then it's not going to properly cool. So if it's 100 degrees outside, it needs to be blowing at least 60-degree air out of the vents, 60 degrees or colder. Otherwise, it's not going to cool properly. So when it's 85 degrees outside and I've got 70-degree air coming out of the vents, some people might think, well, if you have 70-degree air coming out of the vents, then it should be able to get the truck down to 70 inside, right? I mean, that's the logic that some people have, but there are other things to take into consideration. There are a lot of heat sources that are constantly pushing heat into the truck. If the temperature of the air coming out of the vents is 70 degrees, it's not going to be able to offset all of the heat coming in that's coming in at like 100 degrees. So it's going to be a lot hotter than whatever the temperature coming out of the vents is. If the temperature coming out of the vents is 60 degrees, then it's not going to get anywhere close to 60 degrees inside the truck. The temperature coming out of the vents has to be low enough to offset all of the heat coming into the truck. So my number 2 problem is the temperature coming out of the vents being so low. And everything that I've read online says that the main cause of the problem that I'm having is the expansion valve. The expansion valve controls the flow of coolant throughout the system. I don't know if it's based on temperature of the coolant or if it's based on pressure. The pressure changes with temperature, so it's probably pressure related. And if the expansion valve is not like opening and closing when it's supposed to, then it'll let the coolant get too hot or too cold. And it's not going to work efficiently and it's not going to work properly. The expansion valve is like a $30 part. Now, we're talking about the dealer here. So they told me the expansion valve is $60, which is completely normal for a dealer. They 100% markup on every fucking thing. I hate going to the damn dealer. But, yeah. It's a really, really cheap part. I don't know how easy it is to replace, but I don't want to try to replace it myself because I'm quite certain that it involves like draining the Freon out of the system. Or I don't even know if it's called Freon, the R134. I don't know if it's technically called Freon. I don't think it is. I think it's just called. I think they just call it coolant now because most systems don't use Freon anymore. So you have to drain the coolant out of the system to replace this. I think. I'm pretty sure. And I don't want to deal with draining coolant. I don't have the equipment to put coolant back in. So it's not really something that I want to try tackling myself. I'll do really, really extremely light mechanical stuff. Like I'll install that vent myself because you can't really fuck that up. Even a dumbass like me can install that vent. But replacing the expansion valve, and there might also be an adjustment that needs to be made after it's installed. A lot of expansion valves are adjustable. I don't think this particular one is adjustable. But I'm going to go ahead and pay. They told me there was nothing wrong with the unit. He went out here and spent an hour checking stuff, and he said there's nothing wrong with it. It's blowing out air that's 25 degrees colder than the outside temperature, and he said that's well within specs. I said, that sucks. 25 degrees below the outside temperature is not going to cool the truck. I said it needs to be a minimum of 40 degrees, and I've read lots of people that are, getting like 30 and 40 degree air coming out of these vents with the same unit that I have. And I'm getting like 70 degree air coming out. And when he was testing it, it was in a building. It was under shade. So it was like the best the APU works is when it's under shade. And another thing about it is it gets worse over time. Like right now, let me check and see. Laredo, Texas temperature. Right now it's only 77 degrees outside. I've got this little thermal gun that measures temperature. Let me check and see what the temperature coming out of the vents is right now. Come on, it's colder than that. It's telling me 67, but I'm not there. 62. I think it's 62. You got to be really careful because if I stick it right in front of the vent, it'll give me a really, really low temperature because cold air will go inside the detector here. 62 degrees. So it's 77 degrees outside, and it's blowing 62 degree air out of the vent. That's a 15 degree difference. Sometimes this thing will blow really cold air out of the vents. And it's usually when it hasn't been running for a while and when it's really cold inside here. Well, it's 76, 77 degrees inside the truck, and it's 77 degrees outside the truck. So the inside temperature and the outside temperature are nearly identical right now, and I'm getting a 15 degree difference. It sucks really bad. I'm starting to forget what in the hell the point I was making or what I was talking about. But anyway, whenever he was NATO or NATO, NATO is his name, and he's supposedly one of their best techs. And if you go and read reviews on this place, several people mention him in the reviews and say that he's amazing. But he told me that it was working within specs. It was a 25 degree difference between the outside temperature, and this was in a shaded area during the day when it was probably... It was like... We're talking like 8:30 in the morning. It was real early in the morning. So it was only about 75 degrees outside, and we were under the shade. We were in a shaded area. So it might have only been like 65, 70 degrees. And he was telling me that it was a 25 degree difference. And I'm sitting there arguing with him and the service manager, and I'm like, it needs to be at least 40 degree difference for it to work properly. And you're telling me it's only 25. That's just not enough. And I'm explaining to them, heat coming in, if it's only 20, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, then they go back out there and they're like, and they come back and they said, oh, it's actually, it is a 40 degree difference. Because by our measurements, it's 90 degrees outside, and it's blowing like 52 degree air out of the vents. It was not 90 degrees outside. It wasn't even remotely close to 90 degrees outside at 9 o'clock in the morning. Let's look at Laredo. And today is identical to yesterday. Actually, no. Yeah. So, looking at today, let me show you. Just so you don't think I'm making shit up. So, here's the browser, and this is the chart of the temperature throughout the day. So, at 9 a.m., it was around 70 degrees outside. And it's blowing 52 degree air out of the vents. 52, low 50s. 52, 54, somewhere in that area. Which is basically exactly what I was telling them it's doing. It's blowing like 15 degree air difference out of the vents. It fluctuates between 15 and 25. So on average, there's a 20-degree difference. And they're telling me that there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, that's a load of bullshit. Like, this thing does not work properly. So they spent about an hour troubleshooting it. Let me switch this back over to me. And he told me that everything looks good. He can't find any problems, and it's working within specs. And I started talking to him about the expansion valve. I told them whenever I initially did the ticket that I thought it was the expansion valve. So I'm sitting there, well, what about the expansion valve? Did you test it? And he said, well, there's water on the ground. So the expansion valve's working. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's water on the... How does that correlate to the expansion valve working? I've, gone through online, and there's like specific processes that you go through to test the expansion valve to make sure it's working. That's what I expected them to do here, and they didn't do that. He was just like, well, there's water dripping on the ground, so the expansion valve's working. I'm like, that's like, I'm paying you $145 an hour. You're supposed to be a professional and do this correctly. And I got really pissed off at that. So basically what it boiled down to is they just told me that everything was working properly. And I said it's not working properly. So I asked them if they had an expansion valve in stock, and they told me no. And so I got to talking with them more, and I went up to their part guy and talked with their part guy, and he said that he didn't show they had an expansion valve in stock. And then he was like, well, let me check some other stuff, and let me get the part number from the tech, and do this and do that. And then they found that they actually do have an expansion valve in stock. And this got me thinking, are they going to screw me over and not actually install an expansion valve because they think it's working properly, but they're just going to charge me for doing it? I've got to figure out a way to... I'm going to mark the expansion valve that's in there, so that I can look at the next one and make sure that they actually did swap it out. Yeah, I'll do that after this video. I'll get in there with my marker and mark the current expansion valve, and I'll ask to see the new one that they're going to install, and make sure that it is brand new and not a used one. But anyway, they ended up finding that they do have an expansion valve in stock, and I was like, all right, let's put it on. Just replace it. And he went out and talked with the tech, and then he came back in, and he said, the tech said that whenever you replace the expansion valve, you should replace the dryer as well, the air dryer. And I was like, okay. And he said, we do not have the air dryer in stock. And... like, all right. And he said, let me see if I can get one. And he checked, and he said that he can have one the next day. So the expansion valve, they're charging me $60 for that $30 part, and they're charging me $50-something for the air dryer. I don't know what that part normally costs, but it's probably double what the normal cost is as well, because that's the way dealer markup works. But so we're looking at $110 in parts, and they want 3.5 hours of labor at $145 an hour. That's a little over $507 in labor, and then like $115 in parts plus tax. Plus they might also tack in shop supplies on top of that. So we're looking at probably somewhere in the realm of $700 is what this is going to cost me. But I'm quite certain it is the expansion valve. The air dryer, I'm pretty sure, is working properly. I haven't really researched the air dryer. I don't know what exactly it does, but just based on the name, it sounds like it removes moisture from the air. I know that the air dryer is hooked up to the coolant, so I don't know what exactly it does to the coolant, but the humidity is pretty damn low. It's 36% humidity inside the truck, so the air conditioner is working to remove humidity. Still 76 degrees in here. 77 outside, 76 in here, with the APU air conditioner running constantly. And there's no direct sunlight. The sun's down. And they're telling me my damn APU works great. I will never own another Carrier. Sitting there looking at videos of people with Thermo Kings, and they're taking this little thing and testing the temperature coming out of their vents, and it's blowing 30-degree air out of their vents when it's like 100 degrees outside. I'm like, yeah, Thermo King is much better. So my next truck, I'm definitely not going with Carrier, but I'm not 100% sure who I'm going to go with. I'm leaning toward either Thermo King or Onan. Onan, or Onan, I don't know how they pronounce it. They offer their generators in a couple of different engine types. And the only reason I would be interested in Onan is if I went with the Cummins engine. They offer a generator with a Cummins engine, and basically every Cummins dealer can work on it. And that's very tempting. It would be really nice, because the shop that I get all my work done at, not only are they APU mechanics, but they're like Cummins mechanics. They do in-frames on Cummins all the time, so they're very familiar with Cummins engines, and they're familiar with all the APU stuff, so it should be really easy for them to work on Onans. But I might go with Thermo King because it's a little bit cheaper than Onan, even though Thermo King is one of the most expensive APUs on the market. Onan is more expensive. Only a couple $1,000s. Whenever you're talking about a $15,000 APU, $15,000 versus $17,000, what's a couple $1,000s? Hey, I got money to just toss around. At least that's what these mechanics and salespeople think. I'm just made of money. But that's a decision that I hopefully don't have to make for a couple of years. I would love for this thing to just start working properly. The climate, the temperature inside the truck has a huge impact on comfort in the truck, and it affects how well you can sleep. It affects, your free time, like how enjoyable your free time is and stuff like that. Like, it is... Does that say 88? Let me see. It's 88 degrees up at the front of the truck in the cab, and it's 76 degrees in the sleeper area. And it's 77 degrees outside. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But anyway, I'm going to pay the $700 to get those parts replaced. We'll get the air dryer replaced. We'll get the expansion valve replaced. Here's the thing. This system puts out really cold air sometimes. So the system is capable of putting out really cold air. And the expansion valve basically just controls the flow of coolant. So if that expansion valve is not allowing the coolant to flow properly, then the coolant's getting too hot, and it's not cooling properly. I can't really think of anything based on my understanding of how the coolant system works. It's really simplistic, in all honesty. It's really simplistic. And the main thing in the coolant system that's controlling the temperature is that expansion valve. Most all other parts in the coolant system are static, like your condenser and your evaporator. They're static components. They don't have like moving parts in them. It's just a coil or whatever. So if I'm having an intermittent issue, then in my opinion, it has to be with a part that has enough complexity to be intermittent. And an evaporator or a condenser doesn't have that capability. A fan does have that capability. If the fan is sometimes spinning at higher RPM and sometimes it's not spinning fast enough, that could affect things. But my fan is brand new. I replaced that when I was in Seattle, and I've checked it several times. It's working great. The fan is not the problem. So that expansion valve is the only other component in the cooling system that I can think of that's complex enough that it could cause an intermittent issue. So yeah, I'm going to pay the $700, get all that replaced tomorrow. So the place I'm at is W&B Service Company. They're a chain dealer of Carrier. I've been to a couple of W&Bs. I refuse to use the one in town in Oklahoma City. They are just dumbasses. The W&B in Tulsa, they are decent, and the W&B down here in Laredo is also they're pretty solid, decent techs. They're not perfect, they're not great, but they're decent. I haven't run across a Carrier dealer yet that's just like absolutely amazing. So yeah, we'll just throw some money at this and see if it gets fixed. And for right now, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to turn the main engine on, run the main engine air conditioner for probably a half an hour, and it'll be able to get it down to like 60 degrees inside here. And then I'll shut that off, and then the APU should be able to maintain a reasonable temperature for the rest of the night. But right now, it's gonna take the APU probably 4 or 5 hours to cool it off from where it's at right now at 76 degrees to get it down to like 65 degrees in here. It's probably going to take 4 or 5 hours. To just get it down to 70 degrees in here is probably going to take 4 or 5 hours, in all honesty. I don't know if it's ever going to be able to reach 65. But, yeah, so that's what I'll do. And just run the main engine. And whenever I'm trying to sleep or it gets just too intolerable during the day, I right now I'm just having to run the main engine, and it costs a lot of fuel, and I don't like the wear and tear on the main engine. But I'm parked right across the street from W&B. So W&B, they said that they didn't want me parking inside their gate overnight. So they have their main property, and then across the street they have a second property that they park stuff at. And there's a spot, there's a parking lot, a small parking lot that's outside their gate on their property across the street, and that's where I'm parked at. They told me that I can park there. So that's where I'm parked at, and they're going to call me in the morning whenever they get the part in. They said it'd probably be around 10 or 11 a.m. whenever they get the part in. So I'll go back over there and get all that installed, and hopefully it makes a big difference. Hopefully, he's able to give me the vent, the ducting. If he can't give me the ducting, it's not really that big of a deal. If he can't find the ducting, then what I'll do is I'll try to find a home improvement store in town here somewhere. Some type of HVAC, some type of store that sells HVAC stuff, like Home Depot or Lowe's or Harbor Freight might carry it. Basically, any place that carries HVAC supplies should have the duct stuff. Home Depot, Laredo, Texas. Oh, that's not cool. Well, it's not very far from where I'm at. Let me pause this a second while I blow my nose. Alright, sorry, I got to doing other things other than blowing my nose. So, there's a Home Depot not too terribly far from here. And I'm bobtail, so I should be able to get in and out of a Home Depot. It's roughly $1 a foot for duct stuff. This flexible ducting. This is less than $1 a foot. It's 25 feet for $20. This is the only 3-inch stuff that they have in stock. 4-inch is fairly standard. So finding 3-inch stuff, there's not a lot of 3-inch stuff. Now, you can find tons of it online, but actually in store, like right now, all I'm worried about is something temporary. Yeah, if I can find exactly what I want, then yeah, I'll buy that. But what I'm looking at right now is mainly just something that is temporary. This should work well enough to get the air into the cab of the truck out of that vent. And then once I get home, I can order better ducting and make it a lot more professional looking and stuff like that. But for now, I would be perfectly content with just buying this crap and just having it just laying out in the floor, just blowing air into the cab for the time being. You know what? That's 25 feet. Now this is going to be really ghetto, but there's a hole cut out right next to. Let me switch this back over. There's a hole cut out right next to the HVAC system underneath this table. I think I explained this earlier. It's only about 1.5 feet from that hole to this thing. So I could run that really long duct from there out that hole, and then I've got 25 feet of extra stuff I could play with. I could cut that off right there and just have it coming out right there. But I could also just, leave it all there. This stuff squishes down. So that 25-foot roll will squish down to something like this right here. That entire 25-foot roll will squish down, probably this or smaller. So if I run it just outside that hole, then all that excess, I can squish it down to where it only takes up like that much room. And I can leave it there like that. I could tape it or something like that to get it to hold in place like that. And then if I ever want extra cooling somewhere, I can take it and, just set that wherever I want. I can have it going up into the top bunk, or I can have it going up to the front of the cab. I can have that blowing wherever I want. So that opens up possibilities. That'd be nice. I might have it set up permanently like that. But long term, what I'm thinking about doing is, let me double check here. Let me pause this while I double check, because this could take 2 or 3 minutes, and I don't want you sitting here doing nothing for 2 or 3 minutes. Alright, I was checking the inside of the ducting that they used to see if it has aluminum foil on the inside, some type of insulator. And it does look like it's coated on the inside with some type of foil. if they had gone just super cheap and these were just completely just plastic vents that didn't have any kind of insulation whatsoever, then I would long term look at replacing all of my ductwork in here. But it looks like these have foil in them, so I might not end up replacing all the ductwork. But yeah, I'll get this installed, and for the time being, I'm just going to install it right there, and we'll see how it works right there. Long term, I might look at running that vent somewhere else in the truck, because to be honest, there's already a vent that comes out underneath this table, and it gets my legs cold. Even when it's like 85 degrees in the truck, and it's only blowing 70-degree air out of that vent, blowing that 70-degree air across my legs will get my legs cold. That's one of the things that makes it tolerable in here when it's like 85, 90 degrees inside the truck, is that cool air blowing across me. But to have two vents, I don't even like, honestly, if this thing were able to cool the truck properly, I don't like having that one vent underneath the table, getting my legs cold. I would prefer that vent be somewhere else. So to have two vents coming out underneath the table, it would make it really cold underneath this table. I would have to like sit in here with sweatpants on all the time. So I might redo the ductwork. But that's what's going on with me. I don't know how long I'm going to be in Laredo. I don't know if I'm going to deadhead to the house tomorrow. If I deadhead to the house, it's most likely not going to be tomorrow. Because if I deadhead to the house, I'll do it during the night. And tomorrow, I'm going to be at the shop all day long. So, most likely, if I deadhead to the house, it'll be a couple of days from now, minimum. Tomorrow, I will, get all this work done on the APU. Hopefully, that makes a big difference in how the APU functions. And then, hopefully, I'm able to get a vent or a duct and get additional cubic feet per minute into the cab. And hopefully that makes it a lot more tolerable in here, and it makes it to where the APU doesn't have to run constantly and burn all the fuel, and I don't have to run the main engine. It's just a lot of fuel consumption, and it's uncomfortable. So hopefully I'm able to get all that sorted out tomorrow. And then I'll just have to make a decision on whether to hang out down here or go to my house. If I can get the cost per day in fuel consumption down to a minimum down here, then it would probably be more cost effective for me to just hang out in Laredo. And I paid for a shower at Love's because I don't have any more points left at Love's. I hardly ever use Love's. But there was a Love's truck stop right next to the terminal, and that's where I parked at yesterday. So I paid for a shower there, but I have tons of points for Pilot Flying J, and I have like 2 shower credits that are good for another week. There's a Pilot Flying J just north of Laredo. There's a Pilot and a Flying J across the street from each other on the same exit, just north of Laredo. And that's where I'll probably camp out for 2 weeks, so that I have access to decent amenities, and it's not going to spend a ton of money on showers, because at Landstar we get 10 points per gallon. I've just barely started using Pilot Flying J as my place to fuel up. I've been trying to switch to them from TA and Petro because of the reward system. The fuel prices are getting really close between TA, Petro, and Pilot Flying J after discounts. So Pilot Flying J has a much better reward system. So just in the very few fuel ups that I've done at Pilot Flying J, I've already accumulated like 5,700 points because we get 10 points per gallon. So that is awesome. And I don't know how many points they charge for a shower. Probably about 1,500 points. So I have enough for like 3 showers or more right now. And then the 2 shower credits I have. Plus, I am going to have to get more fuel. So, that'll be another shower credit and more points. So I have enough. If I have to go 2 weeks, then I have enough to take like a shower every 2 days throughout that 2-week period, without having to spend too terribly much money, if any money. So I don't know. I'll probably end up just hanging out down here in Laredo. I don't really have a reason to go home. Like, I can't justify going back to the house. There's not something there that's just awesome that I can't wait to get back to. I can sit here and watch TV and play video games in the truck just as easily as I can at home. So I'm not too worried about it. But that's what's going on with me, hanging out down here in Laredo, trying to use the time to get the APU fixed. And looks like I'm going to be hanging out and relaxing for a week or two. And I'll never, ever haul another drop load going to Mexico. This is the one and only I'm ever doing. I was completely unaware. Nobody told me about this stupid policy that they have on getting an empty trailer after you do a cross-border load. This blindsided me. And this really sucks. Really sucks. I was hoping to grab an empty today and get this APU situation sorted today and hopefully have a load in the next day or two. But now I'm looking at a week or two of downtime. That's a lot of money. A lot of money that's just disappearing. So, yeah, that's what's going on with me. Gonna put the APU in the shop again tomorrow. Probably spend about $700. And then if Nacho or whatever his name is can't find some duct stuff for me, I'll probably drive down to Home Depot, grab some duct, and they might have a vent to go along with the duct. I might get that as well. I might restock up on a few things. I might buy some tools and stuff while I'm there for the truck. Who knows, man? I get, like, Home Depot is like the adult Toys R Us. Every time I get in Home Depot, I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to buy everything. I love Home Depot. Home Depot is my favorite store. I'm a gamer, and I would rather go to Home Depot than like a game store. But yeah, I'll get in there and I'll probably end up buying a whole bunch of crap. But yeah, those two things should make a fairly significant difference. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to having an APU that works really well. But anyway, I think I'll wrap up this video. And something I'm thinking about doing right now is just popping the cover, because there's just a thing that's covering up that fourth vent. I'm thinking about just popping that off and letting that vent go without having any ductwork on it. And that'll just blow colder. It'll get it colder underneath in the side compartment where the HVAC's installed. It'll get it colder inside there. And that may potentially help it blow even colder air inside the truck. I don't know. I think I might do that. Give that a try right now. Yeah, I think I might bust out my screwdriver and go ahead and do that right now. But anyway, let's end the video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.